It really is lovely to be here, and I have a confession to make. I was asked to moderate, and I was given something called DataOps. And I'm in the market research industry, and I didn't get it. So very interesting. So it took time to understand it. So really, it's amazing. We're moving from a situation where there's a lot of the data was scattered across different silos in businesses. And what we're seeing is a situation where there is a merging of all this information in one particular space. And I think it really is important for us to be able to see how our business is thriving. And I did warn Harry that I will be asking questions from a small businessman's perspective. But for that, I think for us to be able to go through this, we have a panel, and I'd like to introduce the rest of the panel. I think Rispa, Benson, I think Dan. I'm not too sure whether George is here.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think in the interest of catching up with time, I'd love to ask maybe Rispa to introduce herself and maybe just a few words on how you got into this space.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Rispa Ndwati, and I'm a site reliability engineer with Asian Logic. And my responsibility, or basically how my workday looks like, is taking care of data and sitting on this data, ensuring that the services running are reliable, they are available, they're performing optimally, but all this is for the benefit of the end users. Thank you.
Okay, maybe to my left.
Benson Makale. I work in a bank called I&M. I'm responsible for IT operations. And most of the IT operations, we deal with data. As you rightly pointed out, all of us use data at some point. So we're just trying to streamline it and see how it can add value to the business.
Okay.
Yes.
Dan, I need to apologize. You have to introduce yourself again.
Dan Kwach in the data center space. So really very much excited having this discussion. What we do is to host this very data that gets transformed in the process of this whole DataOps discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and joining us online, George.
Really great that this digital platform is available. George Njuguna, I guess by way of introduction, I think really here to learn. I was being reminded today as we hosted the data commissioner that we generate about 1.2 billion data points a day. And so really this is a very relevant topic, and having discussions on how we can utilize our data to serve our customers better, but also to tap into new growth and new revenue areas. So thank you so much, CIO Africa and the panelists for having me here.
Okay, excellent. So I think it's really is clear, and I think for all of us it's clear that for business, not just to survive, actually to thrive, data is an important requirement. I think the discussions that we're now having is no longer whether data is important, is really how much we use that. So as a business, what would you say is the minimum requirement for businesses to have around data ops to actually start saying that we are using data to thrive? Maybe we can start with you, Benson.
Thank you, John. So I would say the first thing is the mindset, because data ops is a mindset. It's a component of the agile methodology. So you want to start changing the mindsets and telling guys that, yes, we have data, but there's a better way to harmonize and utilize it for us to create value. So you change the mindsets first. Then now you can start introducing the technologies or methodologies to your people. But I think the hardest part is the people part, where they have to buy into this change. Because we are saying the data has always been there. Why should we change how we do it? So that's your first hurdle.
Okay. So people internally and mindset.
People.
Okay.
It's a culture.
Oh, it's a culture.
Thank you.
Rispa?
To build on that, the next thing is processes. So we have to sit down and find out what are the bottlenecks, what is not working. So once we find out what is not working, then we can sit down and optimize these processes. So once we optimize these processes, then we can go ahead to, even start investing on now the technology. So are we choosing the right tools? Which tools are available in the market? Are you going to buy, build, or are you going to adapt something that is easily customizable from the market? Yeah.
Okay. Dan, do you want to add to this?
Thanks a lot for mentioning the tools bit. I think the only bit I can add to this is there is also need to make sure that we have the translation of data or the data as is being visualized in a way that is helpful to the organization. So having that, transformation of the data as it is or as has been captured in a more meaningful way to address organizational needs in terms of, your pain points. Is it something on the revenue side? Is it something on the human resource or people management side? How do you make sure that it's not just data as it is, but it gets translated in a meaningful manner to the organization and gets the executive buy-in for them to support you?
Okay. George, I know you're probably in an infrastructure that is already collecting a lot of data. So anything to add around this, especially just around the mindset that Benson had talked about?
Thanks. I think that's the biggest issue. So I think telcos generally perhaps have the biggest relationships and contact points with the customer. But then you see a lot of other people riding on top of that and having more meaningful connections. So I think it's a mindset. I mean, we talk about CDRs, called data records, and how much information we get probably from where you are physically, how often you engage, be it on data or voice. But I think very little of that is used. I think the team was telling me we have about 2 petabytes of data in our data lake and about 600 data points on customers. But to be honest, when you consider how much of that is used in decision-making and engagement, it's not a lot. So I think the mindset's the big thing. I think I recall when I was in financial services and working with Makale, and I was trying to introduce opening up of accounts online. I think one of the things we were trying to do mainly is to get clean data, because I think both on the telco side, financial services, a lot of the data is not clean. But we found the challenge was the mindset, because then you see people just want to get the account open, but they're not thinking about the value of all the data fields that you're forcing customers to fill in. So I think it's really people understanding why is this so important? What are the use cases and engagements that become enabled by having good data? And then, being able to drive that knowledge across the organization up to each touch point.
Okay, so that's interesting. But I think also mindset is potentially a big barrier. How then do we make sure that as an industry, we are actually communicating to business owners to understand that they're actually sitting on data and this data can talk to them? I don't know, maybe Rispa, you want to say something about this? I mean, is how big of a challenge? Maybe you're sitting in a place where the value of data is known, but I mean, and I think Makale, you also talked about the challenge of getting the buy-in, and I think you meant at a more operational level, but at a higher level, what is the industry doing actually to make sure that this message of data ops and the critical nature of data ops is actually understood by the business owners, so that there is a thought process that goes into it to invest or even at least consider?
Well, Peter Drucker told us that culture is strategy for breakfast.
Okay.
So the best strategy, if you don't change the culture and it works for you, it's going to die a natural death. Now, most organizations want to change the culture, but sometimes the leadership is the problem.
Yes.
So I think we are the industry leaders. It's a burden now we have to bear. If we are going to change the culture, it has to start with us. We need to explain why things have to change and get the buy-in. Like any culture, even a religion, you have to sell the religion and you convert people, right?
Yes.
And if you force people on a religion, you're going to get stakeholder resistance. It's as simple as that. So the buy-in has to come from the top down.
Okay.
I'm not political, by the way.
Well, I guess as an industry, what's happening to actually make sure that the leadership is sensitized? Is there anything that allows that sort of knowledge transfer, especially for medium-sized business that have ambitions to grow? Dan, do you want to?
Yes, I think first and foremost, conversations like what we are having today really gets back to the organizations that we then support, and in which case then we have the knowledge transfer and discussions that can drive us towards DataOps happening. Be as it may, I tend to think, yes, as has been mentioned, we need to make sure that the very first thing we do is, as organizations, let's have data captured in the right format. Once this data has been captured in the right format, we actually have existing tools that can be made use of. This is why when I was talking about the cloud migration, I actually ended by saying we've got tools on the cloud that organizations can actually use to capture, process, and even visualize data. So when you use the public space or the public cloud, you go using Google. I'm certain they've got an analytics tool or a data analytics platform. You use Microsoft. They've got the Microsoft BI or Power BI, which we really use. I can give, for example, in our case, we actually use that to capture critical things like availability, critical things like how long is it taking for certain processes to then progress to the next, in which case we then at least have a view as to how effective we are as an organization. On the commercial side, we use the same tool as well to capture things like maybe our pipeline, how are we progressing from a pipeline to an actual order, how are we progressing from an actual order to a service that is now live, how are we progressing from that to till the end of the lifetime of the contract. So that, to me, is one way that we are then making use of these DataOps, again, as organizations, but also with the full buy-in of our executives, because we present reports or we give reports to them that sort of have the business insights that are of interest to them in terms of for decision making.
So we're basically talking about making sure that the benefits can be seen, and word of mouth, this will go along. Okay, so maybe coming back to you, Rispa, just give us an idea. I'm sure the company that you work for has a huge infrastructure. Can you just give us a scope of what you have on the ground? And if you can, just share with us the sort of like one or two sort of like case studies around how you've made use of the data.
So I'll just do a high overview.
Yeah.
So in the industry I work in, like there are call centers in various parts of the world. We have human agents. We also have chatbots. You're talking to thousands of players. So you're collecting information about what they're asking. Are they asking about deposits? They could be asking about so many things. So as a business, we have to collect all the data that the customers are asking so that we are able even to design products that are suited best for the customer. So as a business, we also want to improve customer experience. So if the business have access to these dashboards, they have access to this, they can visualize data in sort of an understand, so these customers are asking for this. What can we do about it? So also as now in the technical part, what other technologies can we use to help the business be able to have this data in the back end? Like, can they visualize it better? And there are many demands for data. So someone will come with a new demand for data every other time, and the cloud has really helped that because you can build data pipelines quickly now with the cloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So from what I hear, really, it really, and what Dan, you basically talked about, is the data has to be captured in a specific format for it to work, to make sense for you. That's the truth. So Dan, maybe for people who, maybe you will be repeating this, but maybe there's a new, the people who've just joined us for this, is for small businesses, when they hear about the cloud, I mean, how do we communicate to them to understand what value does that work for them? Because I think, and around the issue of security and the issue of backup and all these things that are becoming more important, because most of the businesses are actually getting digitized. But how's that conversation going with small businesses? Is there traction on especially small businesses? Because as you can see, maybe RISPA's organization, you can see, has a big structure. They understand how to make use of this data. But for small businesses, what is the main challenge that you face in terms of bringing them on board?
It's ironical, as I find, or I have a view, that small businesses actually migrate to the cloud a lot quicker than big businesses or organizations. And that really just happens because for a small business, when you get to then be informed of what are those advantages of moving to the cloud, a friend of mine once demonstrated the benefits of the cloud in a very good way by saying, we all want and make use of power. So does it mean we all buy generators or build our substations? No. So what happens if someone then puts up a substation or a generator, and in which case all you then buy from that is power, which is what you need? That is basically what cloud does. So looking at yourself as a small organization, trust you me, you need storage, you need processing, you need compute, you don't need a hardware. So that's what cloud does to you. It eliminates the idea of you having to invest on that actual hardware, but getting the service that is critical to the business. So as a small organization, it's very easy for them to always make these decisions and migrate to the cloud. And very many organizations are at the moment consuming cloud-based services, be it on AWS, be it on Google, be it on Microsoft. Where we actually see a little bit of a slow growth is on the big organizations in the enterprise space that always have to then handle issues to do with governance and data, data security, data processing requirements that would at times, put the organizational objectives ahead of what the technical benefits of migrating to the cloud would bring. So that is really where our experience and our view in the market so far. But we tend to feel that even for the big organizations, it's taking the right change of mindset in these organizations, and the idea that really a hybrid model works is also pushing all of us to make sure that we are lean in terms of how we are making use of our resources. So having a hybrid model and making sure that if it can work on the cloud and without really exposing the organization, then you'll push that data asset to the cloud. But if it's something that you feel you need to have a lot more control of, then you'll definitely still have it in your own private cloud, in which case you will have then migrated to the cloud.
Okay, excellent. That's a good strategy. Okay, George, to you. Kenya, are we ready for DataOps? Where would you say we are in terms of excellence within this space?
Yeah, actually one of the biggest challenges we've faced in the last couple of years as we've been trying to scale and really get a handle on this is actually talent. And one of the engagements I'm having now with universities is how can they get graduates and people who are studying in this space to begin interacting with some of these data while they are still in university. So we're getting people who are ready to actually, not just at a theory level, but practically help organizations with this transformation. So I'd say we are facing a lot of challenges. Probably a good proportion of the team that we've onboarded, I think about 30 engineers, are actually quite a number of foreigners because of just the scarcity of the skill set. But I think it's also about how relevant it is. But I think also an interesting thing is I think organizations also need to reskill and repurpose their teams to be able to be relevant for the future, to be future ready. And I think also we have some of the best engineers as people who are working in billing or reporting, so because then they have the context of the data, and so they're just applying a skill on top of it. I was happy to hear a panelist talk about being an SRE. I think a year, 2 years ago, those were not easy terms to hear anybody introducing themselves. So I think as we industrialize data, you will see a big shift. I think when many people ask me what career should I pursue in IT, I always tell them you should go after data. So I think we're not ready, but I think also you challenged us as industry leaders. What do we need to do? I think it's not to complain, but really to step into the place of giving solutions. And part of that is really getting this embedded in the education system, setting up academies, really bringing people up, because we have a huge population that is unemployed. And I believe we are very bright minds in this country. So if we can just expose them and give them the right training and tools, they can actually make a big difference, not just for our organization, but really for the entire industry.
Okay, George, maybe just a quick question again. So you didn't mention about infrastructure. So I'm assuming, obviously, as Safaricom, you've ticked these boxes. So the issue is not infrastructure. The issue is the human capital, right?
Yeah, okay, so infrastructure is an interesting one. I mean, I think we built a traditional data lake with the whole Cloudera Hortonworks capability. Now we're moving it to cloud, working with AWS. But I'm very happy that in this space, there's a lot of open source capability and cloud is ready. So you really miss the gap of setting up the infra. Perhaps for certain organizations, the budget may be a challenge. And I think those are some of the things that Dan and his team are addressing. That can we have enough sandboxes? Because the value will be unlocked, but sometimes the cost of proving the concept is a bit too high. I think for Safaricom, it isn't. But I think when I talk with a lot of our enterprise customers, sometimes it's quite challenging. But I think the people is the bigger challenge, the skill set, and the culture and the mindset, way more than the infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. So maybe just to wind up, starting with Ben, maybe just a few words around DataOps and where do you see it in the next, let's say 2 years, if you were to look at the crystal ball.
George says we are not ready. I kind of agree with him. In the next 2 years, I see an uptick. I've seen some of the big banks and the organizations that have cold feet. Some of them have started putting their stuff on the cloud, so it looks positive.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to just have a roadmap, take it step by step. If it's about skill sets, we train people. We should take up the courses, and also not only courses, but have actual hands-on experience for the betterment of the people. Okay. Yeah.
Dan?
I see a big opportunity for business value analysts to help us translate data into something that is going to be meaningful and help us make data-driven decisions in organizations. So that to me is something that I see ongoing, and a lot of it is going to happen in the near future.
Okay, cool. George, you have the last word.
Thank you for that. I think I talk about 4 things when I mention this. I think you got to have the courage to really step up and do it. No one's going to do it for you. You really need to have the curiosity to learn what's being done and how you can apply it. You also need to have agility in how you do it. You might try some things and they don't work. You need to course correct quickly and learn. And then the fourth one is really authenticity, just being transparent and honest on what you know and don't know, and really what you've learned and the things that will work or can't work and where it's an experiment. So courage, curiosity, agility, and authenticity. My final words on this. Thank you.
Cool. Can't add anything on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.